Good morning. My name is Reverend Goodlick, and I am the leader of Unity in Europe, Unity Europe. It is quite early in the morning, and during and after my meditation, I was contemplating on change and feeling stuck. When I look around the world, I experience and see a lot of frustration, anger, and a kind of inability to move on and change. It seems to me that we all, both as individuals, communities, countries, nations, we seem to be holding on to things that we recognize, even though we may not agree with them anymore, or they may not work for us anymore. And it feels to me that the turmoil and frustration is because we are asked to change and do things differently. And I personally understand how difficult that is. Though we talk a lot about it, and I think to some degree, at least this is my experience, we pretend that we change, or we do things differently, or we try. But I am aware, painfully aware, how difficult it is to let go and be somebody different, not do something differently. Because the truth is that we can only truly manage our lives differently, respond to life challenges differently, act differently in general, and let's say more lovingly or kindly, after we have become somebody different. And I started to look at my own attitude and what are those things that I recognize within myself and in others. And one of the things that I held on to for a long period of time was something I'd like to call payback time. Resentment. I think resentment is a good word. And I find that a lot of us hold resentment within ourselves, and that resentment generates a lot of the ways we respond to life, our attitude, and it generates kind of a simmering anger and frustration that sort of underpins or runs under our existence. And I think that resentment stems in many different things depending on our culture, upbringing, I find that some people resent one of their parents who was overbearing. Some people resent that they didn't have a parent who was kind and loving and supportive enough. I grew up in an environment that was oppressive and scary and kind of denied our individuality. So I grew up with a lot of resentment towards the system that did not allow me to be who I was, who didn't support who I was. And I can also see that in history, as a nation resents certain historical events that seemingly force them into a different way of being. And I think that if we honestly look at our lives, we can see this on an individual level, on a family level, or a community level, or country, nation, region. And I think it's really important to look at these, because as we hold on to this resentment and the expectation that somebody needs to say sorry, or somebody needs to fix this and make me feel better, somehow makes us miserable, keeps us angry, and we keep on pointing into the world. You should do differently. You should help me feel better. You should fix this because you screwed it up. And we look at each other as nations, as neighbors, instead of looking within and starting a process that I call forgiveness. And I do not mean that we should forgive other people or historical events. I don't think that forgiveness can be done in the past. Forgiveness needs to be in the present, I think, and for myself, because the resentment lives within me, in my consciousness, in my attitude, in my way of thinking, living and acting. And I don't think that I have the right to forgive others, events, things that happened. But I'm also aware that when I do forgiveness, when I work on forgiveness and letting go, I free myself. I free myself from the pain of the past, and I free myself from this simmering frustration, anger, and resentment that seemed to run in everything I did, thought, felt, and kept me sort of frozen in time and in ways of being that didn't support me. And it's a work in progress. I do forgiveness every day because somehow I find something to forgive every day. And I always forgive myself. When people tell me I don't know what to forgive, I tell them what I did first, because I think at the beginning is really hard. It's really hard to forgive, and really hard and painful to look at the things that happened when I felt a victim or felt hurt, and just painful. So when that happens, in order to be able to open the gate, take the first step to show willingness to the loving that I call God, that I am ready. I am ready to do it differently. I am ready to be different. And by different, I mean just a happier, more contented, more loving, more peaceful, more relaxed human being. I say I'm willing to open this door and start walking this. So when that happened, and when people tell me that they don't know what to do or what to forgive, I tell them what I did, to forgive the life they chose. So my first forgiveness, or when I sit down doing forgiveness, and I just feel the discomfort, but I cannot pinpoint what it is that bothers me, I just say, I forgive myself for the life I have chosen, with all its challenges, pain, difficulties. And then I just keep on going with it. And if nothing else occurs to me, I just keep on saying the same thing. I forgive myself for having chosen this life that I experienced so challenging. And then I move into forgiving myself for judging myself. I forgive myself for judging myself for not being a better human being sometimes. And on and on and on. When it comes to the past, I always forgive myself for the judgments. I forgive myself for my own participation. For example, I grew up under fairly challenging circumstances during the socialistic regime in Hungary. And like I mentioned earlier, I experienced a lot of oppression and a lot of fear that was generated by my environment because of the system. And instead of being angry and being forced into being a victim, I say that I forgive myself for buying into the fear. I forgive myself for buying into the image and the way of being, way of living that was offered to me. I forgive myself for not being able to standing up for myself. I forgive myself for not being able to see alternatives. Or if I judge myself, I forgive myself for judging myself, for not being stronger and more single-minded, if that was the case. Or I forgive myself for judging myself, for being too nicey, or the opposite, I forgive myself for judging myself to be too aggressive or too single-minded and too challenging at times. It depends. I usually just sit with it and see how it unfolds. I believe that forgiveness and letting go of resentment, letting go of negative emotions that drive us to, in a way, in my experience, finding punishment in the world, that somebody is punished for my sufferings. I think it's really important to let that go, to forgive whatever there is to be forgiven, to move into greater pastures, in a way, to a better place within ourselves. I hope it helped. God bless.